Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and tonight I'm going to be reviewing Will, A Wonderful World for the Nintendo Switch. In this game, you control two gods. One is a little girl, and one is a talking dog. While the premise really here is supposed to be funny and goofy, it's basically the comic relief for a very depressing, overly talky story. Now, you've heard me rant and rave about how much I love visual novels, but this one is a little bit much, even for me. There's pretty much about 95% writing, and as far as pictures or images to show you what's going on, there's hardly any of that. Even the pictures that do exist are usually after you've figured out the solution to a puzzle. So basically what you have to do is you have prayers that come to you in the form of letters. In those letters, the humans usually tell you about a mess that they got into, and your job is to take bits and pieces of the letter and then rearrange them so that it gives the human a different outcome. For instance, the first puzzle has a young girl that plays tennis with herself at an abandoned tennis court, and she forgets her keys because the lights flicker out in the tennis court, so she can't get back into her apartment building when she gets back into the alley. So the solution is to have the light go out in the alley instead of in the tennis court instead. Now, this is, of course, the first example, so of course it's going to be really easy. Eventually, you might have to juxtapose between 2 or even 3 letters and, take something that happened in one person's trauma and then apply it to someone else's. Sometimes they get into these really creative, almost like sci-fi type of scenarios, and it's a lot of fun to go through the story and figure out, what is the catch to all of this? How is it that you're able to literally have so much control over people's lives? I mean, normally in most of these games that revolve around decision making and getting the best possible outcome, you're the one that's choosing the options for the character you're controlling. However, in A Wonderful World, you only control the gods, and all of these characters that are in silhouettes are people that are responding to you to solve their problems for you. So you're essentially sort of taking away their free will, but sort of not. I plan on making a whole Catholic review of this eventually to go more in depth. But suffice to say that you can't completely rewrite their stories. There are certain parts of the stories that are outlined in black or red that indicate that if you try to mess with that, then you'll create a logical mess, as the dog calls it. So you have a certain limit as to where you can put the fragments of the story. Overall, the game does a really lousy job of giving you hints if you're stuck on the puzzles. There are 2 difficulty modes, Normal and Lunatic. Lunatic is about as hard as its name says. You can turn on hints for each individual puzzle, but they still don't really help you, at all. On normal mode, hints are on at default, and the game tells you, oh, well, just look for the red words. Those red words are huge hints to help you out. And while occasionally that did help me with my deductive reasoning, sometimes it just did not work. I'm very much a visual learner, and when I play games like Zero Escape and Ace Attorney, usually I have a picture or a diagram to help me work through the problem so I can actually see it. But in this game, you get nothing of the sort. Maybe one puzzle had a map that I could reference, but even that was really hard to visualize in my head. So a lot of this you have to have a really vivid imagination. And quite honestly, it's pretty hard to have a vivid imagination once you get further into the game, because the examples I'm showing are pretty innocent. But as you progress through the latter part of the game, nearly every single incident has someone either shooting someone, killing someone. I mean, this is an M-rated game, but it's way more M-rated than anything else I've ever reviewed. It makes the Zero Escape series look tame in comparison. There's hardly any laughter or comic relief to be found. This is an extremely depressing and kind of overwhelming types of games, especially if you're the type that has to get every single ending for an outcome, and then you see all sorts of, oh no, this person lost a limb, or oh great, now that other person lost a limb instead, and Basically, if you're looking for a game that gives you a nice, happy, peaceful ending, this is not the game for you. Because while I have the impression that there are multiple endings, as far as like endings to the game, not endings to the character arcs, they'd be really hard to get the best one, because I was able to get to the credits screen without even finishing any of the characters' story arcs except one. So there's a lot that you can leave up to the imagination and in a cliffhanger mode. So you don't have to be a completionist if you don't want to. Granted, there are a lot of cool things to unlock if you do decide to go the extra mile. There's a soundtrack player, and the game's music is absolutely incredible, pretty much worth the price of admission alone. There's also an illustration gallery, and whenever words appear in blue, you can press a button on the control pad, for lack of a better word. I guess they're strictly called directional arrows on the left Joy-Con, to bring up a synopsis of what the item is. Even if sometimes it can be a bit wordy and feel like you're studying straight from for a test on something. Eventually I just learned to stop looking up every little thing and just let the game proceed on its own with the narrative. Now, you'd think that with most games that are very linear and writing driven, that it would be pretty easy to replay. Nope! I tried starting a file from scratch to do this game again, and before I had even gotten past the first hour of this game, there were scenarios where I just could not visualize how it had turned out before. So, near the end of this footage, assuming I get that far, because there's not much to talk about in a game that's basically all reading, I'm struggling a heck of a lot because there's no images, no picture, none of that, just obscure red text. You can't spend a hint coin like in Professor Layton. You can't ask for a friend for help like in Zero Escape. You don't get a consult option like in the later Ace Attorneys. It's basically just you and sheer logic. So I would definitely recommend that you only get this game, one, if you have a really tough stomach because of all the craziness that happens, and two, if you really like visual novels with very, very, very minimalistic gameplay. There are definitely times when the game gets interesting, and there are certainly moments where once you figure out what the deal is with the two gods, then the game becomes 10 times more interesting. In fact, a lot of times I forced my way through solutions by just trial and error, just messing around pieces, not even knowing what I was doing, just hoping I want to see the trick behind what makes everything happen. And it was a satisfying trick, it's just that the journey wasn't worth the destination. So hopefully there's a walkthrough or something maybe you can consult, just like I said with my Super Paper Mario review. I would highly recommend getting this on the eShop because there's frequent sales from what I heard, and I got it for $9.14, which is pretty cheap for a game with this much content and such amazing music. Just be aware that nearly every single character has a Chinese name, and a lot of times it became so overwhelming to keep track of all of them that actually kind of messed up my awareness for some of these puzzles. Suffice to say, this is not a funny game, this is not a joyful game, this isn't even a happy game. It's more of a game that gets you thinking, gets you crying, but not much in the form of positive entertainment. So basically just pay a lot of attention to the scenes where the girl and the dog are talking, and that's where you get most of the comic relief. Apart from that, this is not a game that you should play if you're going through depression or suicidal thoughts, because they'll probably just make it worse. With that, thank you very much for watching, and until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and hope you have a better tennis partner than this girl does. Bye!